The desert stretched endlessly under a pale morning sky, the kind that looked washed clean by the wind. Royce Barrett guided his horse down a narrow trail, the leather reins creaking softly with each step. He had ridden for days through country that didn't belong to anyone. Not really. The land out here didn't care who you were or what you carried inside you. It took and gave nothing back. He liked it that way. The sun was rising higher now, burning the chill off the air, and he could already feel the warmth settling into his back. He hadn't spoken to another soul in over a week, and that silence felt like a companion, honest and predictable. But as he came down a ridge toward a stretch of cottonwoods, he noticed smoke twisting up from behind the trees. Thin, steady, domestic smoke, the kind that meant someone lived there. Royce slowed his horse, instinctively checking the lay of the land. No wagon tracks, no livestock, just a small creek cutting through the dust, its surface glinting like a strip of glass. He almost turned away. There was no reason to get close, but the horse needed water. That was all the excuse he gave himself. When he reached the edge of the creek, he saw movement. A small figure crouched near the bank, throwing stones across the surface. The boy couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, barefoot, lean, his hair dark as the river rocks he tossed. Royce watched the kid wind up and flick his wrist. The stone skipped once, twice, 3 times before sinking. Same hand, same motion, same little tilt of the head. Royce froze. Something in his chest tightened, sharp and sudden. He had done that exact motion 1,000 times growing up, teaching himself to make a rock dance across still water. The boy reached for another stone, focused and calm. Royce dismounted slowly, his boots crunching in the dry dirt. Then the child turned, and for a moment time stopped. Those eyes, that face. He was staring at his own reflection, only smaller, younger, unscarred by years of wandering. The boy blinked once, studying him with quiet recognition. Before Royce could speak, a woman's voice sliced through the stillness. "You should leave before he starts asking questions." The tone was flat, firm, but beneath it ran a current of warning. Royce turned. She stood several yards away, near a canvas shelter half hidden among the trees. Her hair was braided tight, her posture straight. Apache by her dress and stance, though her English came sharp and clear. It took him a second to find his voice. "Didn't mean to intrude. My horse needs water." She didn't move. "There's plenty of water east of here." "I'll use this one," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Their eyes locked. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then he saw it, the flicker of something that didn't belong in her expression. Recognition. 8 years vanished in an instant. "Kiona," he said. Her jaw tightened, just enough to show she hadn't expected to hear her name from his mouth again. "I thought you'd be long gone by now," she said. "I was." The boy had stopped throwing stones. He watched them from the edge of the creek, sensing the change in the air. Royce's horse shifted behind him, uneasy. He felt the same way. Kiona took a slow breath, her gaze flicking toward the boy, then back to Royce. "You need to ride out, Barrett, right now." But the kid was already walking toward them, curiosity outweighing whatever warning she'd given. Royce couldn't look away. Every step the boy took felt like a nail being driven into something inside him. He didn't need to ask. The answer was written across the child's face. "How long?" Royce asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 8 years, Kiona said. "We've been fine without you." The words hit harder than he expected. He tried to swallow the ache that rose in his throat, but it stayed there, stubborn. The boy came closer, stopping just a few feet away. His eyes, Royce's own hazel gray eyes, met his. There was no fear in them, only that sharp, searching curiosity children carry before the world teaches them to look away. "You're the one," the boy said simply. Kiona's head snapped toward him. "Dakota, go back to the water." But the boy didn't move. "The one she talks about," he continued, his voice calm, almost matter-of-fact. "When she thinks I'm sleeping." Royce felt something twist deep inside him. He couldn't breathe right. Kiona stepped between them, her tone suddenly cold. "That's enough." Royce found his voice again, though it sounded strange in his own ears. "What's your name, kid?" The woman's glare could have cut through stone. "Don't." But the boy spoke anyway. "Dakota." The name hung there, soft and foreign, filled with meaning he couldn't yet grasp. Royce didn't know what to say, didn't know how to take a breath without feeling like he was stealing air from someone else's world. He tried to look away, but the kid lifted his hand unconsciously, resting it against his chest the same way Royce did when deep in thought. a gesture he'd never noticed in himself until this moment. Something inside him cracked open. He told himself it was just the shock, the coincidence, the tiredness of long travel. But it wasn't. It was recognition. Blood calling to blood. He cleared his throat. "I need water for my horse," he said again, just to fill the silence. Kiona's eyes narrowed. "Then take it and go." But he didn't move. The boy was still standing there, studying him like someone piecing together a story from half-remembered tales. Finally, Royce knelt by the creek, filling his canteen just to give his hands something to do. The water was cold, biting against his skin. His reflection shimmered beside the boy's in the surface. Two faces, one grown, one young, mirrored in the same ripples. When he stood again, Kiona had moved closer. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "That's what I told him," she answered. Royce felt the words cut deep. He wanted to ask what she'd told the boy exactly, but he already knew. "He doesn't know you exist." He remembered the night he'd left, the way she'd stood in the doorway, not begging him to stay, just watching. He'd told himself she was strong enough, that she didn't need him, that he was doing her a favor by disappearing. Now standing here, that lie burned like dry whiskey in his throat. The boy picked up another stone. It skipped 4 times before sinking. He turned, smiling faintly, looking for approval. And Royce, the man who had spent years avoiding attachments, felt something rise that he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Pride, raw and uninvited. "Good throw," he said before he could stop himself. Kiona's head jerked toward him, sharp as a whip crack. Dakota's grin widened for a heartbeat, then faded when his mother didn't respond. He turned back to the creek, pretending to focus on the water. "You can't be here," she said softly. "I'm already here." "You're scaring him." "He doesn't look scared." Kiona exhaled, her shoulders rigid. "Then you're not looking close enough. He's been asking questions for years about why he looks different, why he feels apart. I never gave him a name to put to it. Don't make this harder." Royce's gaze drifted to the boy again. Dakota knelt by the fire pit, stacking sticks the same way Royce used to when traveling alone. Precise, measured, deliberate. The kind of detail you don't learn from watching. The kind that lives in your bones. The thought hit him like a hammer. He turned back to Kiona. "Does he know?" Her lips pressed together. "He knows enough." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you'll get." She turned away, but her hand lingered near the knife on her belt. Not a threat, just a reminder. She'd built this life without him, and she'd protect it with whatever it took. Royce wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled inside him. For years, he'd lived by one rule: never stay long enough for anyone to depend on you. It had kept him safe, free, unburdened. Now, for the first time, that freedom felt like a curse. The boy looked up again, catching his eye, and smiled. Small, uncertain, but real. Royce tried to smile back, but his face didn't know how anymore. The sun had dropped lower, casting long shadows across the ground. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried out, sharp and lonely. Kiona broke the silence. "Take your horse and go before it gets dark." He should have. He knew he should have. But he couldn't move. Because deep down beneath the dust and guilt and fear, something in him whispered that this creek, this woman, this child, was the place he'd been avoiding all along. And for the first time in 8 long years, Royce Barrett didn't know whether to run or finally stop running. Evening settled slow and heavy across the valley, the kind of dusk that carried both warmth and warning. Royce stayed by the creek long after Kiona had disappeared into her small camp. The boy, Dakota, was still within sight, crouched near the fire, breaking dried branches into smaller pieces with methodical care. Royce told himself he was just giving his horse time to rest. That was the lie he clung to as the last of the sunlight bled out behind the ridges. When he finally walked toward the camp, the air was filled with the smell of smoke and roasted meat. Kiona looked up from where she knelt beside the fire, her face lit by the orange glow. She didn't seem surprised to see him. "You're still here," she said flatly. Royce unhooked his canteen from the saddle and set it beside him. "Didn't feel right leaving before dark." "Dark's safer than what you're standing in." Her tone wasn't sharp, just tired, like someone who had already fought this argument 100 times in her head. Royce could see that weariness in her posture, in the thin lines carved around her eyes. "I don't want trouble," he said. "You brought it anyway." For a long while, neither spoke. The only sound came from the fire and the steady rhythm of Dakota's small hands working over the wood. When the boy finally spoke, it was so quiet that both adults almost missed it. "Mother, I'm hungry." Kiona nodded toward a small pack beside her. "There's meat, help yourself." Dakota dug into the pack, pulling out a strip of dried venison. He chewed carefully, his eyes flicking back and forth between them. "Who is he?" the boy asked suddenly. "No one," Kiona answered. Royce felt something twist inside him, but he stayed silent. "He looks at me strange," Dakota continued, unblinking. "All strangers do," Kiona said. "Eat." But the boy didn't stop watching him. Royce shifted his weight, uneasy under that gaze. He'd faced down outlaws, soldiers, men with nothing left to lose. None of them had ever made him feel as exposed as this small, barefoot child. When the boy finally turned away, Kiona let out a long breath. "You can't be here," she repeated. "I'm just watering my horse." "You're digging up ghosts." Royce rubbed a hand over his face. "Maybe they needed digging." Kiona stood. The firelight caught in her hair as she faced him fully. "You don't get to decide that. You made your choice 8 years ago. You left." He met her eyes. "I didn't know about him." Her lips curved in a bitter smile. "I told him that. It didn't help." She turned away before he could answer, but Dakota's voice cut through the moment again. "Mother, who made this?" Royce looked up. The boy was holding something small in his palm. Wood, worn smooth by time. A little horse, roughly carved but unmistakably familiar. His stomach dropped. Kiona froze, her shoulders tense. "Put that away, Dakota." The boy frowned. "You said you made it, but you can't carve. I've seen you try." Royce could feel the air thicken between them. "Dakota," Kiona said softly, her voice trembling at the edges. "Please." But the boy stepped closer to Royce, holding the carving out in his open hand. "Did you make this?" Silence. The crackle of the fire filled the space where a lie could have lived. Royce stared at the little horse. His own work. His own hands. A thing he'd made one restless night to keep his mind busy, never realizing he'd left it behind. "Yes," he said finally, his voice low. "I made it." Dakota's fingers closed tight around the carving. "When?" "A long time ago. Before I was born?" "Yet. Were you here then?" "Near here," Royce said carefully. "For a little while." The boy's next words were barely more than a whisper. "You knew her." Royce nodded. "Yes." "And then you left." "Yes." The simplicity of the exchange made Kiona flinch. The truth sounded crueler when it came out of a child's mouth. "Why?" Dakota asked. Kiona stepped between them so fast it startled even Royce. "Enough questions." "No!" The boy's voice cracked, but he didn't back down. "You've told me stories about a man who could carve anything, who made stones skip farther than anyone, who knew the stars." He opened his hand again, showing the wooden horse like a piece of evidence. "Was it him?" Royce couldn't move, couldn't think. Kiona's eyes glistened in the firelight. "Stories aren't always about real people." "You're lying," Dakota said, his voice trembling with something rawer than anger. "You've been lying, and I've known it." He turned and ran before anyone could stop him, sprinting past the creek toward a cluster of rocks at the base of the hill. Kiona took one step after him, then stopped. The strength in her face collapsed into exhaustion. "This is what I was trying to prevent," she said quietly, not looking at Royce. "He's been building you into something in his head, a story. Now you're here, and you're real, and it's going to break him." Royce stared into the fire, his jaw tight. "I didn't ask for this." "No," she said, voice hollow. "You never ask for anything. You just take what you want and disappear." She turned toward him, eyes sharp and wet at once. "Do you know what it's like to watch your child search for himself in every face he sees? To see him look at strangers and wonder if they're the missing piece? You did that. You left that hole in him." Royce had no words. The desert wind moved softly through the cottonwoods, filling the silence she left behind. Finally, he asked, "What do you want me to do?" "Leave," she said simply. "Pretend this never happened. Let him think you're just another traveler. He already knows." "Then lie better," she snapped, her voice cracking. "Or tell him the truth and watch him realize his father didn't stay." Royce looked toward the dark outline of the hill where Dakota had gone. The boy was a small shadow against the rocks, sitting alone. The sight made something deep inside him ache. "I'll go," he said finally. "But I need to talk to him first." Kiona didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter. "There's nothing you can say that will fix this." "Maybe not," Royce said. "But he deserves to hear it from me, not from silence." She hesitated, torn between anger and something else. 5 minutes, she said finally. Then you ride out and never come back. Royce nodded and started toward the hill. The climb wasn't long, but each step felt heavier than the one before. When he reached the top, Dakota was sitting with his knees drawn up, the little horse clenched tight in his hand. Your mother said I've got 5 minutes, Royce said, settling onto a rock nearby. The boy didn't look at him. She thinks if I know you, it'll make things worse. She might be right. Will it? Royce watched the horizon fade from gold to deep violet. Maybe, but you asked a question, and you deserve an answer. Dakota turned, eyes sharp even in the fading light. Are you my father? The question hit like a bullet, simple, clean, unavoidable. Royce had faced gunfire, betrayal, starvation, and cold. None of it felt like this. He took a slow breath. The word yes burned his throat, but it was the only truth left. Yes, he said finally, I am. Dakota didn't flinch. He just nodded once as if confirming something he already knew. Why didn't you come back? Royce's voice came rough. Because I was afraid. Of what? Of being what you needed. Of failing at it. He paused, looking down at his scarred hands. I didn't know how to be anyone's father. So you decided not to try. The words weren't cruel, just honest. That made them hurt worse. Royce nodded. Yeah, I did. The boy was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller. Did you ever think about me? Royce wanted to say yes, but the lie wouldn't come. No, he said softly. I didn't know you existed. And if I had, I don't know what I would have done. Maybe I would have come back. Maybe I would have run farther. Dakota's eyes didn't leave him. I don't want better answers, he said. I just want the truth. Royce felt something crack inside him. Something old, something he'd carried too long. Then that's the truth, he said. And I'm sorry. The boy didn't cry. He just looked at him, steady and calm, the way Kiona used to. I believe you, he said quietly. Even if I don't like it. Royce let out a shaky breath. Below them, the first stars were beginning to appear. The world was settling into night again, unchanged, indifferent. But up here on this lonely ridge, something had shifted. A silence that had lasted 8 years finally broke. The night air was cool on the ridge, carrying the clean scent of rain that never came. Royce and Dakota sat in silence for a long while after the truth left Royce's mouth. Neither of them knew what to do with it now that it was out there. Real, irreversible. Finally, the boy spoke. So, what happens now? Royce stared at the dark horizon. I don't know. You're not good at answers, Dakota said. But there was a faint curve at the edge of his mouth. Royce almost smiled. Never claimed I was. The boy ran a thumb over the small wooden horse. You carved this? Yeah. Can you teach me? That question caught Royce off guard. He'd expected anger, not curiosity. He looked at the kid, really looked at him, and saw something more than resemblance. There was a steadiness in Dakota's eyes, the kind that didn't come from innocence, but from surviving truths too early. Maybe, Royce said, takes patience. I got patience. Royce huffed softly. We'll see about that. They walked back toward the camp together, the quiet between them less heavy now, though Kiona's figure by the fire told him the storm wasn't over. She stood as they approached, her hands clenched at her sides. I told you 5 minutes, she said. Royce nodded. Took 6. Then you've already broken your word. I'll go, he said, but not tonight. Her eyes narrowed. Why not? Because running from this again would finish what 8 years started. He looked at her squarely. Let me stay a day or two. For him, Kiona's jaw flexed. And then what? You vanish at dawn and he watches the trail until dark every day for the rest of his life? Royce's voice stayed low. Maybe I just give him something real to remember before I do. She wanted to argue, but behind her, Dakota said quietly, Please, Mother. That one word, the plea she'd never heard from her son before, tipped the scale. Kiona looked from the boy to the man and finally sighed. 3 days, she said, and then you're gone. Day 1, tracks in silence. The next morning broke bright and still. Dew clung to the long grass by the creek, and somewhere a hawk cried out. Royce woke before dawn, years of habit keeping him alert even when he wanted to rest. He found Dakota already awake, crouched near the fire pit, drawing lines in the dirt with a stick. Couldn't sleep? Royce asked. The boy shrugged. Didn't want to. Royce poured some water from his canteen into a tin cup and handed it over. You drink? Dakota took it, gulped, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. What are we doing today? Thought I'd show you how to read the ground. Like tracking? Exactly. They set off along the creek, Royce walking slow so the boy could match his stride. The morning was quiet except for the crunch of boots and the murmur of water. Royce pointed to a patch of mud near the edge. What do you see? Dakota knelt, squinting. Something walked here. Good start. What kind of something? The boy traced the shape with his finger. Not a person. Hooves? Royce nodded. Deer, maybe 2 days ago. See how the edges are dry? Dakota's grin flashed. You can tell that? Every mark has a story. You just gotta learn how to read it. They moved on, following faint signs. Broken grass, disturbed stones. The boy was quick to learn, asking questions without fear of sounding foolish. Royce found himself answering them easily, surprised at how natural it felt. When Dakota found a small trail of paw prints leading toward the rocks, his face lit up. Coyote? Royce crouched beside him. Too small. Fox. That's still good, right? Better than good. The pride in the boy's smile stirred something warm in Royce's chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Day 2, lessons in wooden words. By midday, they'd worked their way back to camp. Kiona was mending a leather strap, her eyes tracking them without expression. He learns fast, Royce said. Kiona didn't look up. He always has. I'm starting to see that. She didn't answer, but there was the faintest softening in her face. That afternoon, while Kiona prepared food, Dakota brought the carving knife and a piece of driftwood to where Royce sat cleaning his saddle gear. Can we start? Royce motioned for him to sit. First rule, sharp knife, steady hand. He guided the boy's grip, showing how to angle the blade, how to let the wood decide what it wanted to be. Don't force it, he said. Work with it. It's harder than it looks. Most things are. Hours passed quietly, the kind of silence that builds connection without needing words. When Dakota finally held up his first attempt, a lumpy shape that might have been a bird, he looked proud anyway. It's terrible, the boy said, laughing. Royce smiled, a real one this time. It's yours, that makes it worth something. From the shelter, Kiona watched, her expression unreadable. She'd seen men try to earn forgiveness before, with gifts, with apologies. None had looked like this, a man teaching a child how to carve meaning from a rough block of wood. That night, after Dakota fell asleep near the fire, Kiona approached. Royce sat sharpening his knife, the flames reflecting off the steel. You're making it worse, she said quietly. He looked up. Maybe, but at least I'm not pretending it's better. Do you think you can fix 8 years in 3 days? No, he said, sheathing the blade. But maybe I can start paying for them. Kiona crossed her arms, her voice softer. He's a good boy, strong. He got that from me. I know. He got your stubbornness, too. Royce chuckled, the sound low and rough. Guess that makes both of us lucky and cursed. She hesitated, then said, He asked if you'd stay longer. Royce looked into the fire. I figured he would. What did you tell him? That I don't know. Kiona sighed. That's not enough. It's the truth. She studied him for a long moment. You're not the same man you were. Don't give me too much credit, he said. I'm still trying to figure out how to stay put without running inside my head. Kiona didn't smile, but her eyes softened slightly. Maybe that's what growing up finally looks like. Day 3, the quiet between hearts. The last day came too soon. Morning broke gray, clouds rolling low over the hills. Royce felt it the moment he woke, that dull ache of something ending before it should. Dakota sensed it too. He spoke less, kept close. They spent the morning fixing a broken section of the fence near the edge of the camp. The boy worked hard, his small hands blistered but determined. You don't quit easy, Royce said. Neither do you. The compliment landed heavier than either expected. Later, they sat by the creek again. The air smelled of damp earth. Royce skipped a stone, watching it jump across the water. Dakota tried next. The rock sank after one bounce. He frowned. You're throwing too flat, Royce said, adjusting his hand. Angle it. Let the motion do the work. The boy tried again. This time it skipped 3 times. He whooped, proud. Kiona's voice called from the camp, distant but clear. Food's ready. Coming, Dakota shouted back. Then he turned to Royce. Will you eat with us? Royce hesitated. Yeah, he said finally. Yeah, I will. As they walked back, Dakota slipped his small hand into Royce's without thinking. The gesture was quick, unplanned, but it rooted Royce to the earth more firmly than anything had in years. Kiona saw them coming and didn't say a word. She just set out 3 plates instead of 2. They ate in near silence, the simple rhythm of family life filling the space words couldn't reach. When the meal ended, Royce stood and looked at the horizon. "I'll be leaving at dawn." Dakota's fork froze halfway to his mouth. "Why?" "Because that was the deal." The boy's eyes filled but didn't spill over. "You always keep your deals?" Royce's throat tightened. "I try to." Kiona looked at him across the fire. There was no anger in her expression now, only the weary understanding of someone who knew love and loss live side by side. Dakota stood, the small bird carving in his hand. "Then before you go, you have to show me how to make another one." Royce nodded slowly. "All right, kid. Tomorrow morning before the sun's up." The boy smiled through damp lashes. "Deal." Kiona exhaled quietly, her gaze lingering on Royce longer than it should have. Somewhere in that silence, forgiveness started to take root. Not loud or dramatic, just quietly alive. As the fire burned low, the three of them sat together, the desert night wrapping around them like a fragile peace. For the first time in 8 years, Royce Barrett didn't feel like a ghost passing through someone else's life. He felt, if only for this moment, like he belonged. The morning came too quiet. No wind, no birds, just that heavy stillness before a storm. Royce woke before dawn, same as always, but this time his chest ached with the weight of leaving. He sat up in his bedroll and looked toward the small shelter where Kiona and Dakota still slept. The fire from last night had burned down to ash, a few threads of smoke curling upward like ghosts refusing to fade. He could have packed his things right then, saddled the horse, and been halfway across the ridge before the sun climbed over the horizon. It's what he'd done his whole life, slip out before goodbyes could make him weak. But this time he stayed seated, staring at the thin trail of smoke, waiting for the boy to wake. When Dakota finally crawled out, rubbing his eyes, Royce forced a smile. "Morning, partner." The boy yawned. "You said you'd show me how to carve another one." "I remember." Royce held up the small knife, already sharpened. "Come on, let's make it count." They sat side by side near the creek, the first light touching the water. The world felt small and clear, like everything beyond this valley had stopped existing for a while. Dakota handed him a piece of wood he'd picked the night before. "I want to make a horse," he said, "like the first one." Royce nodded. "Good choice, but this time it's got to be your hands that make it real." He guided the boy's fingers carefully around the knife handle, reminding him where to press and when to ease up. "Let the wood talk to you," he said. "It'll tell you what shape it wants." Dakota grinned. "You talk like the old men from Mother's tribe. Guess I've got more in common with them than I thought." The boy laughed, that free kind of laugh that only comes when a child forgets pain for a minute. It hit Royce in the gut, because he knew he'd given Dakota plenty of pain to remember. They worked quietly for a long time, the rhythmic scrape of blade against grain filling the air. When Dakota finally held up his carving, it was rough but clear. A small horse, legs a little uneven, head tilted. "It's not perfect," the boy said. Royce took it gently from his hands. "Neither am I." That made Dakota smile. "Then I guess it's perfect enough." Breakfast was quiet. Kiona served them without speaking, her eyes unreadable. She'd expected him to leave at sunrise. The fact that he was still there seemed to unsettle her more than if he'd gone. After they ate, Royce stood and dusted off his hands. "Fence by the corral needs fixing. I'll handle it before I go." Kiona hesitated. "You don't have to." "I know." He picked up an axe and headed toward the post line before she could argue. From the corner of her eye, Kiona watched him work. The measured rhythm of his arms, the quiet efficiency of a man who'd spent his life building things he never stayed long enough to use. She wanted to tell him to stop, to save herself the ache of gratitude, but the words wouldn't come. Dakota followed him, of course, chattering about the animal tracks they'd seen, the way the sky changed color before rain. Royce listened, nodding occasionally, letting the sound of the boy's voice fill the empty spaces inside him. By midday, the storm finally arrived. It rolled in fast from the west, clouds stacked like black mountains, thunder rumbling low and steady. They barely made it back to the shelter before the rain came in sheets. Inside, it was dim and crowded, the three of them pressed together by necessity. Water drummed on the canvas roof, and for once, the sound wasn't lonely. It was alive. Kiona sat near the entrance, her arms around her knees. Dakota leaned against Royce's shoulder, carving knife still clutched in his small hand. "He'll cut himself if he's not careful," Kiona said, half under her breath. "I won't," the boy answered. Royce chuckled softly. "He's steady. Got your focus, not mine." Kiona looked at him. He's got more of you than you think. The words hung between them, heavier than the rain. Outside, lightning flashed. The thunder that followed shook the ground beneath them. Dakota flinched. Without thinking, Royce pulled him closer, his arm a shield. Kiona saw it, and for a moment, something inside her softened. "You were gone so long," she said quietly. "I stopped picturing your face. I had to, or I'd never stop waiting." Royce looked at her, guilt plain in his eyes. "You deserved better." "I didn't need better. I needed honest." He swallowed hard. "You're getting that now." Kiona nodded slowly. "Then don't waste it." The storm lasted half the day. When it finally passed, the world outside smelled like wet sage and fresh earth. The air felt washed clean, like maybe things could start over if they tried hard enough. That evening, when the sky cleared, Dakota ran down to the creek, barefoot, splashing through puddles. Royce followed, slower, watching as the boy bent to collect smooth stones. "Gonna try skipping again?" Dakota grinned. "You bet." Royce watched the first stone fly, 1, 2, 3 skips before it sank. "Nice arm." "You taught me." "Guess I did." Dakota picked up another rock. "You think you'll teach me more next time you come back?" Royce froze. The air thickened between them. "Kid," he started, "you are coming back, right?" The question tore at him, simple and unguarded. He'd been expecting it since the moment he'd stayed that extra morning. Royce crouched beside him. "I don't know." Dakota frowned. "That's not a real answer. It's the only one I've got." The boy's voice wavered. "If you leave again, how long before you come back? Another 8 years?" Royce looked down at the water, at his own reflection breaking apart with every ripple. "I don't want to lie to you. I don't know what kind of man I'll be tomorrow, or what this world will do to me. But if I go, it won't be because I don't care." Dakota stared at him, trying to measure whether that was enough. "Then why does it feel like you're already halfway gone?" Royce couldn't answer. He just reached out and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Because part of me always is. But maybe I'm trying to change that." For the first time, Dakota looked older than his years. "Then try harder." Later that night, the firelight painted their faces gold. Kiona was quiet, threading new stitches into a torn blanket. Royce sat across from her, the boy between them, drawing patterns in the dirt with a stick. "You should stay," Dakota said suddenly, not looking up. Kiona stiffened. "Dakota!" He cut her off. "I'm not asking. I'm saying it." Royce exhaled slowly. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" the boy said, finally meeting his eyes. "You work hard. You fix things. You don't yell. You don't lie. That's more than most men here." Royce had no defense against that. Kiona set her sewing aside. "You think that's all it takes? Staying isn't just about being here. It's about not running when it gets hard. Can you do that, Royce?" He looked at her, the truth plain in his face. "I don't know, but I want to try." Her eyes searched his for a long time. "If you stay, it's not for me. It's for him. And you'd better mean it." Royce nodded. "For him." Dakota's small hand reached for his again. That same easy gesture as before. "Then it's decided," the boy said. Kiona shook her head, a weary smile ghosting her lips. "You sound like your father." "Good one," Dakota said. "Maybe that's not so bad." The night stretched on. The wind had gone soft again, carrying the scent of cedar smoke. Royce leaned back, watching sparks climb into the dark. He could feel Kiona's gaze from across the fire, wary, uncertain, but not angry anymore. Something fragile had started between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. When Dakota finally drifted to sleep, head resting against Royce's arm, Kiona whispered, "You really mean to stay, don't you?" He looked down at the sleeping boy, the weight of him solid and real. "I do. I just don't know if I know how." "Then we'll find out," she said softly. "But if you break him again, you'll answer to me." Royce smiled faintly. "That's fair." Kiona turned away, but he caught the flicker of a tear before the shadows took it. For the first time in his life, Royce Barrett didn't feel like a man passing through. He felt like someone who might belong to something worth fighting for. Outside, the last of the storm clouds slipped beyond the horizon. The stars came out again, scattered and bright. And for once, he didn't look at them as a man planning his next road. He looked at them like a man learning how to stay. Morning light crept through the thin canvas, soft and gold. The rain from the night before had washed the desert clean, leaving the world smelling like wet cedar and new beginnings. Royce Barrett woke to that smell, to the small, rhythmic sound of Dakota breathing beside him. The boy had curled up close during the night, one arm draped across his father's chest like he was anchoring him in place. Royce lay still, afraid that moving might break whatever fragile peace had finally settled here. For the first time in years, he didn't feel restless. He didn't feel the pull of the horizon or the whisper of the next road. He just felt here. Kiona stirred at the other end of the shelter, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. She didn't say anything, just watched him quietly for a moment. "You're still here," she said finally. He nodded. "Still here." It wasn't a promise, not yet, but it was something. A new kind of morning. The day unfolded with a gentleness none of them expected. The sun rose higher, and the ground steamed faintly from the leftover rain. Royce split wood behind the shelter, his hands steady, his movements sure. Kiona was tending to the small garden plot she'd coaxed out of the hard soil. Dakota helped them both, carrying pieces of wood twice his size, pretending they were heavy just to make his father laugh. Every so often, Royce caught himself watching them, trying to memorize the ordinary. The sound of Kiona humming under her breath, the sight of Dakota's hair falling into his eyes, the rhythm of work that didn't involve leaving anything behind. He'd never had mornings like this before. When the chores were done, Kiona poured coffee into 3 tin cups and handed him one without a word. It was strong and bitter, but it tasted right. Dakota sat between them, carving in silence. He'd improved already. The shape in his hands was becoming something recognizable. "Looks like a bird," Royce said. "It's supposed to be. Then you're getting good." Kiona glanced at him, a trace of amusement in her eyes. "Careful, he'll believe you." "I mean it," Royce said. "He's got patience." "Patience and stubbornness," she said softly. "A dangerous mix." Royce smiled. "He gets that from you." She gave him a look that might have been half a smile. "And the running. He gets that from you." He didn't argue. She was right. The weight of staying. As the sun climbed higher, the air grew heavy with heat. Royce led the horse to the creek, Dakota trailing behind. The water was clear again, the current slow. The boy skipped a stone, 4 skips this time, clean and steady. "Looks like you're getting better," Royce said. "Barrier better than you?" Royce grinned. "Don't push your luck." They stood there for a long while, watching the water move past, both lost in thought. Then Dakota asked the question Royce had been waiting for. "Are you really staying?" Royce didn't answer right away. He wanted to, but words had failed him too many times before. "I'm trying," he said finally. "That's the truth." Dakota's voice was small. "Trying doesn't sound like forever." "No," Royce said quietly. "It doesn't. But it sounds like today, and today's what I can promise." The boy thought about that, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll take today." Something in that simple acceptance broke Royce open. The kid didn't need grand gestures or empty words. He just needed presence. The fear of tomorrow. That evening, the sky turned a deep orange, the kind of color that only existed for a few minutes between light and dark. They sat together by the fire, sharing the quiet the way other people shared stories. Kiona finally spoke. "He's happy." Royce nodded. "I noticed." "Don't ruin it." "I'll try not to." She stared into the fire. "You're afraid, aren't you?" "Always." "Of what?" He thought about that for a while. "Of wanting this too much, of messing it up once I do." Kiona looked at him then, her gaze steady and sad. "You will mess it up. We all do. That's what being human is." He almost laughed. "That's supposed to make me feel better?" "It's supposed to make you stay." Her words landed deeper than she probably meant them to, because staying wasn't easy for Royce. It wasn't in his bones. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the things worth keeping were the ones that didn't come easy. Dakota was half asleep beside them, head resting on his folded arms. The flicker of the firelight made him look younger, softer, untouched by all the years Royce had missed. Royce reached out, brushing a bit of ash from the boy's hair. "He deserves better than me." Kiona's voice came gentle but firm. "He deserves you trying. That's all he's ever wanted." 6 months later, the desert had changed colors again. The dry grasses were brittle, the air crisp with the coming of winter. But the small camp looked stronger now. Fences mended, roofs patched, soil turned and waiting for the next season. Royce had stayed. He still woke before dawn, but now he didn't pack his saddle first thing. He fixed tools. He taught Dakota how to read the weather, how to ride bareback, how to make a fire with nothing but flint and patience. Some days he still felt the pull of the horizon, that restless itch in his chest. When it came, he told Kiona, she'd hand him an axe or a shovel and say, "Work it off." It always helped. One morning, Dakota came running from the shed, his voice full of excitement. "Father, come look!" The word hit Royce every time, "Father." Dakota held up something small and wooden. It was a carving of a man, rough but detailed, the tilt of the head, the stance, the faint smile. "It's you," Dakota said proudly. Royce took it carefully. The weight of it felt heavier than wood should. "You made this?" "By myself. Mother helped with the sanding, but I did the rest." Royce's throat tightened. "It's good work. Better than mine ever was." Dakota beamed. "That means I'm learning from the best." Kiona stood in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron, watching them. There was pride in her eyes, but also something else. Peace, maybe. That night, Dakota added the carving to the small shelf near the fire, beside the others. The first crooked horse, the bird, and now the man. A story told in wood. The night of the firelight. Later, as the stars came out, the three of them sat together again. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the cold air. Royce leaned back, his arm around Dakota, his eyes on the horizon. "You ever think about what comes next?" Kiona asked. "Every day," he said. "But I try not to plan too far ahead. I've learned life has its own way of deciding for you." She smiled faintly. "You sound wiser. Or just older. Maybe both." Dakota yawned, curling closer. "Are we a family now?" he asked sleepily. Royce looked at Kiona. She met his eyes. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Royce said, "Yeah, kid, we are." The boy nodded and drifted off, his small hand still gripping his father's sleeve. They sat there a long while after he fell asleep, listening to the wind move across the plains. Royce finally said, "He changed everything, didn't he?" Kiona nodded. "He saved you." Royce looked at her. "Maybe he saved all of us." Reflection. The quiet after the storm. Long after the fire died down, Royce sat awake, staring at the stars. They looked different now. Not like distant promises, but like reminders of everything right here. He thought about the man he'd been, the one who left because staying scared him more than dying. And then he thought about this boy who had his eyes and his stubborn heart, who had pulled him back into a life he didn't think he deserved. He realized then that staying wasn't about being ready. It was about showing up anyway. And maybe that was enough. A question for you? Royce Barrett's story isn't just about a cowboy learning to stay. It's about anyone who's ever run from something real, anyone who's ever been afraid of love or forgiveness or being seen for who they are. So let me ask you this. If life handed you one more chance to face what you walked away from, to sit by the fire you once left behind, would you stay this time? Would you try even knowing you might fail? Because sometimes trying is the only way to prove you finally stopped running.